This is Robert's Record Corner, and I'm Robert, and welcome to the 2-minute, surprisingly engaging history of the prog rock band Yes. Lately I'm thinking about the band Yes. If you're younger than me, and which means that you don't remember when MTV had music, then you probably don't know who Yes is. They were prog rockers, weird English guys. In the 1970s they made these epically long songs with weird time signatures and this heavy-duty bass sound. In the 80s something crazy happened. They tried to be a mainstream rock band, bleached their hair, wore primary colors, and it worked. Owner of a lonely heart, much better than a owner of a broken heart. Owner of a Broken Heart was a #1 song. Who saw that coming? I'm thinking about Yes because last month they got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you know, I never know what to think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've been mad at them in the past. I mean, I kind of have a rule. If Jackson Browne can get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, probably your band should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? Robert's Record Corner. I mean, there should be some level of standard to anoint a band or a singer or a musician or a songwriter to that status. Hall of Fame? Yes? Really? So should Yes be? Well, I turned to Wikipedia for help, and I found myself transfixed by the most crazy history of a band I've ever heard of. Roll it, Dietrich.
It's 1968 and John Anderson and Chris Squire bond over Simon and Garfunkel songs and decide to make a band. So they get a drummer, Bill Buford, and some guy named Peter Banks, but they don't have a name for a band, so Peter Banks says, hey, let's name it Yes. They say yes, and they fire him from the band and bring in Steve Howe. They need a keyboardist, so Rick Wakeman joins, but he likes Bach a lot. And by the time the 1970s comes around and they make the album Fragile, which is their biggest album.
Where's the keyboard, Rick? Bring in the keyboard.
He sneaks in Stravinsky and Brahms and all kinds of things, and Bill Buford says, forget it, I'm joining King Crimson. A year later, Rick Wakeman quits the band because he doesn't like John Anderson's plan to make a double album about yogis. Yes goes on to make a 22-minute song about war and peace and various solo albums, and Rick Wakeman says, I'm back in. But then the 1980s come, and everyone's angry. There's new factions. Anderson and Wakeman want fantasy music. Howe and Squire want harder edge music. So Yes ceases to exist. Howe joins Asia, which is a massive hit. Anderson and Wakeman don't do much at all. Squire tries to make a band with ex-members of Led Zeppelin called XYZ for X, Yes, and Zeppelin. It doesn't happen.
You know, these guys are dorks. Yes, trivia time. True or false? This is drummer Bill Buford. False! It's drummer Alan White. And when Chris Squire didn't have a band, he had Alan White come back, along with guitarist Trevor Rabin. And Yes vet Tony Kaye to play keyboards without all the Brahms stuff. Tony also sometimes wore Billy Idol shirts on stage. And then they asked the guy who sang Video Killed the Radio Star to sing, but they fire him.
The record company says, what's the name of the band? We like this idea. They say Cinema. They say that's a bad name. We need a new name. And they say, okay, we'll change the name to Yes. They need a singer, so they trick John Anderson back in the band, but under the agreement that he doesn't write any of the songs.
And this whole hot mess becomes 90125, the biggest Yes album ever.
John Anderson's pissed, so he leaves the band, ends Yes, and decides to make a band with, you guessed it, Bill Buford, Rick Wakeman, and somehow Steve Howe pulled back again. They name the band ABWH, acronyms. It becomes the 1990s, so they decide to reform Yes. And they have all the guys back together. But Rick Wakeman doesn't want it, so they get a Russian keyboardist by the name of Igor Koroshev, and they make 2 albums, but Igor Koroshev is charged with sexual assault, fired from the band. Rick Wakeman comes back in, various illnesses and confusion as we get to the 2000s. Someone names a planet after Yes. Then, for no reason, Anderson decides to make a band with Trevor Rabin and Rick Wakeman called ARW. And then they say, forget it. You know what works for us? Let's just be Yes. And they join the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Let me recap. A band that started because they liked Simon and Garfunkel, the most tender folk band of all time, and became this crazy huge prog rock band, has had 19 members in 49 years. They've started and stopped more times than I can count. They make really long, weird songs.
They could not be doing more.
And when I listen to that, you realize they're working as hard as they possibly can. They're having a ridiculous amount of fun, even if they put Brahms in. If Jackson Browne's in, yeah, Yes should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Absolutely.
Make the noise that the wrens make. Make the noise that wrens tend to make.